Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to our sponsor, Veracity Networks. Thank you for believing in me. It means the world to me. And thanks to all of you for tuning in week after week. This is phenomenal. I can't believe where we're at with the downloads, and we're trending. It just blows my mind. And it's because we're bringing on amazing people who have been through a lot, who have overcome. And it's inspiring people all over the world, honestly, and it's so cool. And today I have a very special guest. His name's Weston Clark. Weston, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Todd.
Yes. I have known Weston now. How long's it been? We've known each other over a year, I would imagine, at this point.
So a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
A year and 2 months.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Time flies, right?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, it's been amazing.
You know, Weston is an amazing human being, and you guys are going to get to know Weston today. The way when I first met Weston was in treatment. I was one of his counselors, slash, life coach, here at Wasatch Recovery, and he went through the program, and here we are 13 months later, and he's doing amazing. He's clean. He's more than that, though. You're happy.
Yeah.
I mean, you just shine so bright, and you have such a energy about you. Everyone here talks about, like, man, Weston is on fire.
Thank you, Todd.
and I can't tell you how grateful I am that you're willing to come share your story. I know it's a vulnerable thing to do, but I know how you own it, and that's why one of the other reasons why you're doing so well. So I'm excited for people to hear this today.
I'm excited too, Todd.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, why don't we just start with, tell us where you grew up and a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. So, yeah, I grew up in a little town called Lehigh, and it's not little anymore. It's crazy big.
Yeah, it's like one of the biggest cities now, I think.
It is. So, yeah, I grew up in Lehigh. I grew up I had a brother and sister, and I actually, I'll talk about it more, but I had some stepbrothers and sisters that came into my life later on, but I'll get into that too. And yeah, I grew up our family was, we were family oriented, growing up. We liked to do family stuff. We did a lot of, camp outs and stuff like that I remember. But growing up as a kid with my dad, I grew up in a really strict house. Our house was strict, really strict. I remember, as it was tough as a kid to, I just had a lot of friends, that grew up in our street and I was like, wow, I mean, compared to myself and always thought, well, these guys got a normal family, and I really believed that from a young age that I had it real. I mean, it was just hard. But, growing up, me and my brothers and my brother and sister were really close. I love my family,
Sure.
No matter what I went through, I love my family and I had my mom. So my mom ended up passing away, and I was like 8 years old, and she had a major heart attack. And that was one of the hardest things that I think I dealt with as a kid in life. I mean, even to this day, there's things that I still struggle with. But it was hard to have that news. I mean, the news broken to me that my mom had passed away.
Right.
And
how did you handle it in the moment? When you heard the news, like, maybe kind of tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, it was very difficult.
Yeah. So I was at a sleepover with my grandparents and with my uncle, and I wasn't there at the house. So I remember I had a really vivid dream that night about my mom, and that she had passed away in my dream. And I remember, and I remember hearing the doorbell ring, and I got up to answer the door, and I remember it was raining that day. I remember it was raining, and there was lightning and stuff like that. And there was all my family, and everybody was crying, and I was looking around, I seen my dad and he was crying. I didn't see my mom. And I knew that something was wrong. And so, yeah, everybody came in, and my dad, grabbed me, and he broke the news that my mom had passed away. And the hard thing was for me, it was that I wasn't there. I wasn't there. My brother and sister were. And, that was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with is, I wish I could have been there to comfort my brother and sister, as they were hauling her off in a body bag. It was, I'm sure it was tough for them.
Sure.
But that was one of the things that, it took me, honestly, Todd, months. I really got really depressed as a kid. So we took about a month off after she passed away, and from school. So we didn't go to school. Kind of just took that time off to heal and to be around family and to cope with it. But I remember going back to school and just really depressed. I remember looking at an old picture, school pictures, going up to, the cheesers, the big smiles. And then it was like from when she passed away, it was like, you could tell there was a big change.
Like you weren't smiling like you used to. And
yep.
Yeah. Cause again, when you lose kind of like the glue to the family, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are, this little kid, you're probably just like, how do I try to act normal? How do I even move forward? Right.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. And that was the one thing that, I really got into a really bad stump, and I wasn't happy. I remember, I was on medication. So my dad had got me on, I think there was, cause I had, ADHD really bad. And so I was put on a couple different medications, for,
right.
at that time. So, I remember dealing with going back to school, and I remember, one incident that happened that terrorized me was a young kid that was in my class said he chanted, "You don't have a mom, you don't have a mom," and I remember like that devastated me.
Yeah.
Like I remember listening to that, and I remember I just sat down in my desk, and I remember the teacher came over and he took the kid out of the room, and he came over to me and just gave me a really big hug, and but that it was hard.
Yeah, sure.
And
wow.
That was something that I struggled with even through as a child. So my dad, so this years had passed after my mom had passed away, and my dad, was dating and actually met my stepmom, which he's still married to today.
Yeah.
And then I had 3 brothers and 1 stepsister.
Okay.
So, yeah. So there was what is that? 7 kids
total.
Yeah.
Family all of a sudden.
Yeah. and and it was really and that really helped a lot because I think where I was still struggling with me and my self-esteem and to I was really like down on myself and depressed, and she came in and kind of were the mother role and kind of helped us kids, and played a big role in where I'm at today. But just to be a comforter.
Sure.
Because I think we all that's one thing I missed is my dad wasn't the comforter kind of guy.
Right.
But moms, normally moms are they want
they're more nurturing, more kind, more sympathetic. And typically, not always.
Yeah.
But again, when a piece of the family is no longer there, whether it's the dad or the mom, it leaves a void like you're talking about, and it makes things difficult moving forward, especially when you're that young when it happens.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and with what's been and what as I mentioned too is my dad was an alcoholic, and dealt with,
Okay.
he had alcohol problems, and and I, as a kid, I grew up, there was, some yelling and, not severe violence, but there was some abuse, from the drinking and stuff like that happened. And, which is typically with alcohol and with any kind of drugs, and, so, but, having my stepmom there, she did, or there was a balance, and she did, help into that. So, fast forward just a hair, I ended up getting into baseball. So that was one of my things.
Passions.
I mean, I was really
Nice.
passionate with baseball, in Little League. It kind of was my escape to away from all the kind of the abuse or the
For
just
sure.
that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Somewhere I can go and enjoy myself and to just get away.
Yeah.
And, and my dad, he came to my games, he watched them. He came and watched, and we spent a lot of time together, as a family. We did family things, but there was just the alcohol it seemed like that was always a problem.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I thought that was normal. As I grew up seeing my dad drink, I believed that, maybe I could, that's normal.
It's kind of all you knew, right? You
Yeah.
just saw dad doing that, and you're a kid. You kind of go, and I can relate to that. My family, they grew up drinking and partying, and it just seemed normal to me. It really, truly did. I just thought, oh, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And so I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And that's, and I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. So my mom's mom and dad, they tried to spend and take us as much as they could, and they were, they were really close with my mom, and my mom was really close to them. And so we spent like every weekend at their house for like, it's like grandma and grandpa's house,
Yeah, second family almost, like just
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong there,
Oh, right.
treats and video games.
Oh yeah, all day.
And
That's cool.
Yeah, and so we did that for years, and I mean, like 6 or 7 years, from after my mom passed away, and they tried to, they took us out to do fun things and got us involved with the church. My dad did. My dad, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and as a kid, my dad would just take us to church and drop us off, and he'd go back home. He never was active or anything like that, but he at least would take us there and give us that opportunity, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that's good.
And so our grandparents did the same thing, and it was, life was good. I mean, we spent a lot of time with family, which was fun, but I noticed that, I still had those problems that I never, like depression, anxiety, that I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't, I was a small kid, so I got cut from the baseball teams, until my senior year.
Right.
So it was like I felt like I wasn't good enough. That's what I really believed, and that was like for years I'd harbored that in my head, and it started to actually when I was in high school. So I was about 15 when I started to try marijuana.
Okay.
And I remember with my cousin, we would go on our like Thanksgiving, trips up to the cabin, and I remember the first time I smoked weed, and I remember like it was the best thing that I ever tried. That's what I thought, like, oh my gosh, and
I want to point something out there, because I think I hear that a lot over the years. And typically when a kid, male, female, doesn't matter, who's been struggling with depression, anxiety, they're down, whether it's because of a death or whatever other reason it may be, when they try a substance, whether it's marijuana or something else, that instant relief feels like it's so amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
And that's why kids who are really struggling, when they try that, little do they know the path they're going down, but that's why they go, wow, I haven't felt like this I want to feel good kind of thing. And
Yeah.
did you notice that as you were doing this?
Yeah. And that's kind of what it was doing, was like numbing that pain. And it was like that escape that I, like the depression, that I felt like when I felt good, but I felt like that was, to feel good, I had to smoke weed or start doing drugs. That's
Right.
what I believed. And, and so like I was hooked. I mean, I remember it was every weekend I would go to school, and I remember this is in high school, and I remember I made the baseball team. So I made the baseball team. And after I've been cut, and I still had the habit. Like I still remember we would, going on our bus rides to, out, to Emery County or whatever it was. And we would smoke a joint before the bus ride.
Right.
And I remember, that's how bad it was, but I thought I could, I believed that I could, play baseball and do those kind of things. And but slowly it started to affect my how I reacted and how I played. I mean, I remember in the outfield, there was a pop fly that came out there, and I never missed a pop fly ever. And it like came right in my mitt, and it bounced right off my mitt. And I was like, and the coach was looking at me. He's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, what the crap?" But and so it started to, every weekend I remember I'd go to school, and that was one thing I looked forward to, was going to my cousins and partying, and
Right.
and so I did that for years. I mean, through high school, and I guess. So I did graduate, I did barely graduated. I had to keep a 2.0 to play baseball,
Yeah.
And
Shouldn't be too hard to get the 2.0, but sometimes it is.
it is. Yeah. I'll tell you, it was tough for me.
Oh, man.
So, I ended up getting into some more of the harder drugs, which was methamphetamine. That was when I got into high school, and out of high school, I started dabbling into that. And I remember, honestly, Todd, I had problems with self-esteem, my whole childhood. I felt like, I just wanted to be able to fit in with a group or fit in with somebody. And, when I got out of high school, I had a lot of good friends, but, they weren't, the more I started using, the more those good friends that I stopped hanging out with. And then it was more of the people that, that basically had problems just like me, like that were addicts. And so I came out of high school, I started really, really getting into methamphetamines really hard. And I remember, I was living with my dad at the house at the time, and it was like we had bedtime. If it was under his roof, it was okay. You got to 8:00, lights out, even though it's still light.
Right.
It was lights out. You're under my roof. You're under my roof, living here. You got to be under my rules. And I honestly, I didn't want to. At that time, I didn't want to live by his rules. I wanted to do it my way.
Right.
And that's where I left home. I says, you know what? I'm not going to listen to you. And we got in a bad argument, and I left. And I didn't come back. I remember. So I'd had an inheritance. I had a good chunk of money that from when my mom passed away. And it was probably $40,000 that I'd had as that I could use whenever I needed.
Yeah.
And so, I was like, hey, $40,000 out of high school, bought me a nice car and partied it. I partied, I used that money, just blew it. And I remember, I disappeared for, I think it was a year and a half. Like, I didn't talk to my family. They were
Really?
Yeah.
So you just cut them all off and just went your other direction.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember, I remember just wanting to fit in, and the people that I was hanging out with were the people that were telling me what I wanted to hear. Basically, being my friend.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't notice what, they were, it's like when you have money, you people take advantage, and I didn't even know who I was, Todd. I remember,
Sure.
like, I was lost. I mean, I remember I was so addicted to, anything. I mean, drinking, it was meth, heroin, cocaine. I mean, it was whatever I could do to numb, but just to whatever I could do to fit in with and feel cool, because
How quickly did you go through that money? Was it like
within a year,
within a year gone?
yeah, gone.
All with drugs in a car.
Yeah, and
Wow.
the car that I had actually had, ended up getting wrecked by a friend that took it and wrecked it and rolled it. Didn't have insurance, so I'd lost that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember, I didn't want to go back home. I didn't want to do that, and I thought, well, you know what? I can do that. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to try to shape up. And so I ended up having, I met a woman, my ex-wife, and I had 3 kids with
Okay.
her. And that's where, I kind of, I thought, well, I can have kids, I'm going to try to do this and try to, be responsible and try to do it my way and try to,
But you're still doing drugs
yeah,
at this point.
heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy. And so I actually,
Isn't that interesting? Like you're heavily into drugs and you have these thoughts that, hey, I can have kids. I can be a dad.
yeah.
Was there a part of you that were thinking, well, maybe if I have a kid, this will shape me up?
Yeah.
Because I think some people get caught up in that,
Yeah. Yeah. I had that belief that if I, I don't know where I got it from, but I really did. I thought, okay, I have kids, and then that'll get me to straighten up, and I can, all them problems that I had in the past, I can
Right.
just,
Yeah.
they don't matter.
They don't
I can
matter.
just sweep them
Yeah.
under the rug and
Mhm.
take care of my kids. And
Yeah.
that didn't work. I remember, having, so I had 3 kids within 3 years. So they're 3, 2, and a 1-year-old. And, which they're great kids, by the way.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Love them to death.
Yeah.
But I still had a really bad addiction, and me and my ex-wife did. And so our addictions, got my kids taken away. My kids, my 2 youngest, they got adopted out, and then my oldest, got taken by my ex-wife's family, which was the best thing at that time, because
Yeah.
they were, just going through
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, that was really tough. And when that happened, Todd, I remember, when they got taken, I thought, you know what, my life's over. I thought, why try? Why get clean? Why do it? Just go all out, and that's what I did. I remember, my addiction got even worse from there, and that was bad, but it got worse. And I remember, disappearing. I don't think, like, my family hadn't seen me in years.
Mm.
And, I remember, my little brother, and I remember him call me up, and he says, I just want you to know I love you, and I worry about you. He's like, and I remember he says, where you at? And I told him where I was at, and I remember he showed up and he never left my side. And I remember,
Wow.
I did all that stuff. I was doing it all around him. And he didn't, he just looked at me like, his eyes just teared up, and, I think about that to this day, how grateful I was to have him be there at that time. Because honestly, Todd, I think, like, my life was really depressed.
Yeah.
I was really depressed, and I even contemplated suicide. and to have my little brother there just to be my sidekick
Yeah.
and go through that, and I'm so grateful for him. But it was tough. I really did put a lot of my family through a lot of pain and in my kids, and that's that it just compounded everything so much worse, and
Yeah.
and I really did. I went as an addict for 23 years. And it just
23 years.
23 years.
Wow.
And it went in for, I used every drug you could possibly think, was addicted to pornography. I was addicted to, masturbation, sex. Honestly, Todd, I had an addiction to everything. And it really got to that point where, I honestly thought that I would be better off dead. And I really did. And the thing that's really crazy about addiction is it kills you, either if it kills you, self-inflictedly, or the drugs kill you.
Yeah.
But it eventually will kill you. It sucks your soul. It sucked my soul dry. And I remember 23 years of drug abuse, and I would, I spent probably, I don't know, 24 times in jail, in and out of jail.
Wow.
In and out of jail. And I remember, getting in, I got involved with, a drug distribution ring, and this was 2011. And I remember, having 2 first-degree felonies and 9 second-degree distribution charges. And, I remember thinking, you know what, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I didn't even know, like, having that stuff, getting pulled over and, and just, the cop's like, you're going to jail. And I'm like, for what? And he's like, you got 2 first-degree felonies, 9 second-degree felonies. And so, there was a lot of, thinking that I had, that when I was sitting in jail, like the 20-something time I've been to jail and still haven't learned, my thing is I would go to jail and I'd pray to God, and I would ask him, okay, God, I will change this time. Just let me out of jail and I'll, please.
Yeah. One of those bargaining
Yeah.
with God.
Yeah. And you know what? The thing that's really cool about God is he listens. And no matter what, like I always ended up getting out of jail every time. Like I'd go in there and and I love the gospel, and I love, reading scriptures in the Bible, but I do it when I'd go in there, and I would, I'd get on the boat, go to church on Sunday in there, and then do everything. Make my commitment with God.
Like if I get out of here, I'll be clean. I'll do the right thing.
Yeah.
And then you get out.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then right back into the.
Yeah.
And that was the same. And so, I ended up doing a couple years in Salt Lake County Jail, and that was, and I got out and right back into the, I had a girlfriend at the time that was using, right back into the, because I thought that I can go back into this relationship and be clean and be okay with, even if she wants to use, but that doesn't happen. That doesn't work.
It's funny how we somehow justify that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, she's an active user, but I'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It never works out well.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's funny because they call it in AA meetings, it's insanity,
It's insane.
It is. And honestly, like it's all, it's funny because I to this day, me and my brother actually laugh about, like that, it's like, I actually thought, like, before I actually came into treatment, I had a girlfriend and I was so if fast forward. I was I ended up losing everything I had. I had again. So there's a
there's a pattern here.
Yeah, and so I remember I was really, really bad on heroin. I was addicted to heroin for about a year and a half, and this was every day. I couldn't move if I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And I remember, leaving and giving a friend a ride to somewhere in West Jordan, and I remember, in this time, my life is just, I was so wore out, Todd. I remember, like, I would pray, even though I was really high and struggling with my addiction, but I still prayed. And I really had that communication with Heavenly Father. And I remember, I asked him, I just was so wore out. I asked for help. And I remember, as I was leaving this house, we got pulled over by some cops. And I remember looking down into my, I remember looking down on the ground, and, I had paraphernalia, heroin. There was just so much just paraphernalia everywhere. And I remember he walked up to the window and he looked in, and I just was like, man, he could tell I just was like done, and, like, I remember he said, step out of the car, and he put me in handcuffs, and I felt so relieved. I felt like there was like a weight lifted off my shoulder, and,
like I can finally stop at this point. I'm finally like, think about it. You were like, you felt relief in handcuffs.
Yeah.
That's a very telling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, like the years that I'd been praying and wanting help, and I knew that, like, I had to, like, I know it was God's time, and I knew that I had to even to go on longer than I did. There was a reason behind it. And, and I was sitting in handcuffs, like, I could feel God's grace. I could feel like that, like I didn't have to struggle anymore. And I remember as I was heading down to the jail, they impounded my car. I was living in it at the time.
Wow.
And so I remember, all my stuff was gone. I lost all my stuff, my car, and I was sitting in jail. And I remember, I met this guy, and the crazy thing is this kid, the nicest kid ever, was sitting in the pit with me. We had the same birthdays.
Really?
Same birthday, 8/11/81. And I remember that, and I remember they both called the jailer called our name and called us up, and they said, you guys are getting overcrowded, released. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I didn't want to. You
didn't want that.
No.
You're like, no, keep me.
Yeah, really. And I remember, they overcrowded, released us, kicked us out, and I had nowhere to go. I was homeless. And this kid, he says, well, you know what? I'll get us a taxi to my place. You can just stay in my car. I'll leave the car running for the heater. You can just stay out, and I'll give you a ride wherever you need in the morning when the sun comes up. And I thought, okay, that's really nice. Yeah, sure, and so he gave me a ride the next morning, and I remember, having nowhere to go. I was homeless, hungry. I had I had despair. I just didn't know what. Like I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. I says, well, they won't take me to jail, and I prayed. Like, I honestly, I was in the back of a Dollar Tree parking lot, and I remember I kneeled down in prayer, and I didn't even care at that time. I didn't even, it was like, I just needed help, Todd.
Yeah.
And I had this impression to call my brother. The
same one that came and stood by you and didn't leave. Yeah.
And I remember calling him, And I says, and I hadn't seen, I'd seen my brothers and family for years. And I just said, hey, Cade, I need help. And his wife, she was hesitant because of my history.
Because of your past.
Yeah,
for sure.
which is understandable. That's
They'll never trust you again.
Yes, exactly.
We talked a lot about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, and Cade, he says, no, he says, there's something I need to go get him.
Mm-hmm.
And Todd, I'll never forget in that time, like when I fully surrendered to God and to let him take the wheel was that time. And I remember it didn't matter. Like I remember even he says, don't leave. He says, I'm leaving Spanish Fork. He says, I'm gonna be up there in 30 minutes. Don't leave. And I remember in that time when I got off the phone with him and this was my addict mind, I thought, well, maybe I can just, call somebody real quick and get a fix. And then, I was clawing and scratching. And, the crazy thing is it didn't matter who I called. Nobody answered.
So you actually tried.
I tried.
Wow. And no one answered.
Nobody answered. And I, it's crazy because when he got up there and picked me up and I remember, he's like, I'm like, well, there's this one girl, I was just like, let me just call her. If we can go meet up with her, and he says, dude, like, it's over. Like you're done. I mean, let's get you some help.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, saying, okay, I'm willing. I'm wanting something better than what I've had for the last 23 years, because honestly, like I've got so many faults. I've got so many problems. I've got so much that I need to deal with, but I can't do it alone. I got to have help.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember he's like, okay, well, we'll get you into treatment. We'll come detox at my house and we'll get you into treatment, which Wasatch Recovery was.
Is that what led up to coming here?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I remember, when I detoxed there at his house off heroin, and it was like, I didn't even, like, I started to feel what being sober felt like after 20 something years. Like I didn't know, like I forgot what it felt like to live, to have like, to feel good, just to feel good, just to feel myself. 'Cause honestly, Todd, I felt like I didn't even know who I was. Like I lived this lie. I lived this, I was dishonest. I stole. I just did whatever I could do to help pay for my habit. But like, I forgot like who I really was.
Yeah.
And I remember, getting into treatment. He says, well, you got to do it this way. And I remember, coming through Wasatch Recovery and then, which was like, I never did treatment. Never did. I mean, I think I did like one little stint,
right.
But it wasn't like, I didn't take it serious.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I got into treatment and, I started getting in tune with my higher power, like my Heavenly Father. And,
What were some of the things that stood out to you there? I want to get to the higher power for sure, because that's a big part of your recovery for sure.
Yeah.
So you come here to Wasatch. What were some of the things that you went through here, and maybe some of the things you learned here?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And that's when I got to meet with you and work with you, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And just my impression of you, and anyone here would say the same thing that I work with. You ooze this positivity, this kindness, this compassion, and you would exude that to everyone, but you weren't doing it to yourself.
Yeah.
You were beating yourself up so much, That was my first impression with you, and but it was grateful. I was grateful to be able to be a part of your journey here.
Yeah.
And but I was just curious on what maybe stands out to you.
Yeah.
Here you are, back again here in the office.
I love it. I love it. Good question, Todd. I love it. So, one thing that I learned, coming through treatment is, vulnerability. I think that like was because like I avoided being vulnerable.
Sure.
And like I mean, I think as individuals and humans, like sometimes it's like we back up. We don't want to, feel pain or feel feelings or shame or guilt. But one thing that I learned here is to get vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to be uncomfortable. Because honestly, like Todd, I that's why I used drugs for so many years, because I didn't like to feel uncomfortable and I didn't like to feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I numbed those out. But when I came here and sat through processes and really but like honestly, it was being honest with myself and to have both feet in. You can't just, it's hard. You can't just have one foot in, one foot out. You got to be all in. And I think, is just getting everything off your chest, being honest, and just speaking everything, all the problems, and just getting vulnerable, because, I love being vulnerable. And I think that's the thing that I love. And especially when you're connecting with somebody like we're doing, is there's nothing more powerful than being vulnerable and to connect with somebody. And I think that's like, you feel that you don't want to stop. You listen, you're like, keep going. You're like, that's one thing I love about it. And just the willingness, I think just having the willingness. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And honestly, Todd, I remember the month that so it wasn't, I decided that the first month it was going to be my way. I was going to have this, I think you remember, but I had this, this calendar set.
Oh, I remember.
And I thought, okay, well, there's my exit date, and I remember, Todd, you called me out and you said, why do you do drugs? I sat there and I'm like, I couldn't even answer that question. I couldn't even answer that question. And that's when it was like that paradigm shift of like, okay, I'm going to stay. I'm going to let it. I'm going to let, you guys do your work, and I'm going to let God, it's his will. It's not mine, because mine was 23 years of doing it my way, and it didn't get me nowhere, Todd. It got me homeless, jail, lonely, it didn't work. And so, I loved recovery. I came through and, I decided to stay and do as much study as long as I could. And
and I remember that shift when you were here. It's funny because when people come here, they always have like, I'm here 30 days and I'm out of here. I'm going to do, And, there's a beautiful statement by Tony Robbins, actually. He says, if you're counting the days, it's not lasting change. It's not permanent lasting change. And I thought, wow, that is so powerful. It's like, if you're counting the days here at Wasatch, what's the point? Like, what do you got to run off to? You have nothing. Think about it. You lost your car, which was your home. You've lost everything, even relationships. You got your one brother who's got your back a little bit, but at the same time, he's like, dude, I can't do anything for you at this point. You need to go do some work. You have nothing. It's so funny. What are you running off to? What do you got to hurry and get out of here for? What are you doing? I always laugh. I'm like, so what do you got to rush off to? And they're like, nothing. You have a job? No. You have is family even talking to you? Not right now. I'm like, well, what
you got a date.
But it was really cool that eventually we all here at Wasatch saw that shift in you. And boy, you really did. You started getting vulnerable. You started sharing more. I mean, you'd break down crying in my office every time we would meet. But and a lot of times they were really happy tears, because you could just feel your heart softening through this process.
And that's one thing I was grateful for. And I think one thing I want to touch on too is, please. with when we hit rock bottom. I think that rock bottom is like, and I, Todd, you taught me this, and I remember like when I look at my rock bottom is like being grateful because, I think like we have to go through trials, we go through tribulation, we go through pain and suffering, we go through a lot of things in life, and I think like rock bottom, and I can't remember, I might butcher this, but is in LDS 12-step meeting, somebody shared saying that hitting rock bottom's where you find the foundation of God in somewhat like that, I'm not sure, but
well, yeah, it's almost like there's nothing hindering you at this point that would keep you from connecting with God. It's almost like this is it.
Yeah.
You can't go any further, so to speak, unless you're dead, right?
Yeah.
And so usually that's when people say, okay, I'm ready to change my life.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that I hit rock bottom, or I wouldn't have been in this mindset, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that, but for many years, I didn't live it. I was like, played the victim and so for a long time.
Boy, you were a big victim when you got here.
Boy, it was like everybody's fault but mine.
Yeah,
and
I called you out a lot on that one.
Yeah. I love it.
And you just look at me like, what? But you were really open to the feedback,
Yeah.
and you'd be like, yep, I see what I'm doing here. And that's what I loved, because you took the feedback. It stung at times, but you took it and you're like, okay, I got to be better. Yeah, I see where I'm playing the victim here.
Yeah.
And to see you overcome that while you were here, and obviously stuff you continued working on as you left residential, but yeah, it was awesome to watch.
Yeah. It's been a really good journey. I mean, just to overcome those, because there was so many problems. I mean, I had so many things that were going on, and honestly, like I remember when I left here, like I just was like, I'm like, this is what recovery's about, and so, I left residential, and which I'm forever grateful for this place, but I got into, doing aftercare and stuff like that. And one thing that I did learn that I want to share too is service.
Yeah.
What's one thing I learned here at Wasatch is service work. And, one thing that there's a quote is, when we're in the service of others, we're in the service of our Lord, our Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And I love that, because, for years I was so selfish and all about me. And when I came through treatment, I started to learn how to be selfless, to learn how to, love and care for others, to help others, to, because I mean, that's, when you're helping, doing those kind of things, Todd, like that's the last thing on my mind, is I want to go and
right,
take something into my body.
Sure.
And that's one thing I loved, and I'll remember, and I still do that, and I love service work. When we have, with COVID, it's been hard because we haven't been able to get out there and do those kind of things, like, service work and stuff, but, it's slowly coming back, but, service is a big one. I think that's one of my favorites.
Well, and that's you, dude. And even when you were here, I could tell you were always the guy to help. If we had to move chairs, anything like that. It might sound so simple, but so many people just walk away noticing that we're working. You would always hop in. You were always pitching in. When you guys would go on experiential with Tina and Tessa, you guys would, you were always the guy that was leading the way, and they would say that. We talk about you all the time. And you put in the work, Weston. I want to give a shout out to you right now. Just honestly, like, you came here and did the work. If you could have come here, and so many people do, and they don't put in the work, and then they wonder why nothing's changing. Dude, you really did put in the work, and it was so impressive to watch. And even when you left and you went to aftercare and all that other stuff, you continued working. And what I love about you now, and I want you to touch base on this, like, you really are like so spiritually connected, and I know you believe in your Father in heaven, and you're a faithful member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's a big part of your recovery. Did it just gradually get strong, or did something happen after treatment, or was it during treatment? Like, because you're on fire right now. Like, you really are.
Thank you,
It's so
Todd.
fun to watch, So just touch base on that for us.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. So yeah, actually, I've always had a spiritual side to me as a kid, and I think that came from just before I was even, for thousands of years, but when I finally came into treatment, and when I started to pray and to read the scriptures, and go to church. I'd started going when I was in residential. I'd go on Sundays, and that's that hope, and I'll remember when I moved down with my brother, and we were on a job, and I remember, my brother said, the missionaries are on the phone, want to talk to you. And I remember talking to him, and he says, yeah, can we come over and visit with you? And I was like, how did you get my number? They're like, well, it's just in here on the, on the computer saying that you're new to the ward. And we thought, you would like to have, maybe a lesson or something. And so, yeah, I said, sure. And I remember, sitting at my brother's house, and, the elders quorum president came over with the missionaries and knocked on the door. And, I something was telling me I didn't want to answer it, but, something was telling me answer the door. And when I answered the door, I just started crying. I was filled with the Spirit. And that's the hope, that's letting hope in. And, and he says, well, we sat down, we're visiting, and, and he says, well, I want you to start coming to church and invite you to church. And then he says, but you know what? He says, something just told me that Spirit told me that I want you that you might be interested in being a facilitator at a LDS 12-step meeting, and,
wow.
And I remember feeling that, like, that grace, our Heavenly Father's grace and His love and His tender mercies, it was just like I felt loved for so many years. Like I went and even through treatment, I went through treatment, and I loved it and felt loved, but I really felt like I felt loved. I felt His arms around me. And I remember, like, I took that position at the, as a facilitator, but, I everything I could do, like, I got a church calling, whatever, I have the opportunity to minister to these families that are in the ward. And, I have the opportunity to go and visit and sit down, and I can even share my story with them, and, I had the opportunity to baptize this young lady and her kids, and that's like a tender mercy, but I got to share my story with her, and she says, you know what, I'm in recovery too. And I thought, like, it would be really, that's when she asked me if I would mind baptizing her. And so, like, it's just like the blessings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just kept one after the other.
Yeah.
And here you are, a facilitator in those 12-step meetings.
Yeah.
And is that once a week? Is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure they just love you there,
Oh,
man.
yeah. It's so fun. One thing I wanted to share too with my dad and like, our relationship now is amazing. And, the one thing that I learned over the years is forgiveness. My dad's health hasn't been the best. So I got to go and give him a blessing the other day.
Oh, wow.
And, when it was all over, I remember Todd, I knelt down to his eye level, and I looked at his eyes, and his eyes were welled up. And my dad doesn't cry, but I says, Dad, I love you. I love you. And I gave him a hug, and, Todd, this is what life's about. It's about, it's not, we all go through trials. We go through our,
Mm-hmm.
we go through troubles, and we hit rock bottom. But you know what? It's all about forgiving, and, to go through, and I could just, I love you, Dad. And to help him out, and, resentment, it's not worth it. Resentments don't get you nowhere. It got me to rebel, and I rebelled for 20 something years. And
Yep. Resentment breeds rebellion.
it does. Absolutely. And so that's one thing, is my relationship with my dad's amazing. Like we talk like almost every day.
That's awesome.
It's like I never, it's like my dad calls. It's not like I avoid it. I'm like, Dad, hey, what's up?
Yeah. Like words before. Don't answer.
Yeah.
Right. Don't pick that one up. Or, right.
Right.
Your family's got to just be blown away right now. Like in your brother,
Oh yeah.
who was there in those critical times.
Yeah.
He's got to just look at you and go, holy cow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's a stud.
Yeah.
He is, like, and that's the thing, is like, I'm so grateful for him and what he's done in my life. And
what has his wife come around?
Yeah. 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 So they're, it took her a while, but
and totally get it.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about
Yeah.
we would talk about this in treatment, where we train people not to trust us, and then we resent them for not trusting us.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they don't love us.
Right.
So what we need to do is own that piece of it,
Yeah.
and it goes away. And
Yeah.
then over time, as they see you by your actions,
Yeah.
people start to soften up. People
Yeah.
go, hey, Weston's really got this.
Right. Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It took it, and like you said, some family it took them a little bit longer, but
Yeah.
like I had the opportunity to go through the temple and to get my endowments, and it was amazing to have family there.
Yeah.
To be there. And,
I bet they were like, I can't believe we're here now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
13 months later, I'm picking them up in the back of Dollar Tree in a parking lot.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. And we
Hungry.
can laugh, but I mean,
Yeah.
that is the contrast.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful. And you've probably heard me say this in treatment, but I mean, I wrote this down as you're talking, because this is kind of the theme of this podcast today. In your life, is the greater the darkness, the greater the light.
Yeah.
The greater the sinner, the greater the saint. And dude, you are a saint, man. And everyone that comes in contact with you can feel. I feel it. You blow me away, dude, and you inspire me more than you know. And I don't maybe express it enough. And here we are, though, face to face, and I'm going to tell you to your face, you inspire me to be a better person.
Thank you,
more than you even know. And you'll be an inspiration. I can't wait to have 165,000 people hear this, hear your story, because you're going to inspire them to want to be better. And no matter what position they're in, or where they're at, or if they believe in religion or not, every one of us can learn from you, dude.
Thank you, Todd. I want to shout out to you too, Todd. I'm so grateful for you, and you really do. Like I'm like one of your biggest fans. Like
I know. You're like the first one to comment on everything. You're always, I'm like, man, this guy's on fire.
Yeah, because
I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome, and you do so much good, and you really inspire me, and ever since I've came in here, like you have set, like, you've helped me and set a way, and I look up to you, and I'm grateful for all the good you do.
Thank you.
And I want to kind of mention something to the listeners too, if I can, real quick.
Please.
We can all be really hard on ourselves at times, and I think if we have to love ourselves, to remember to love ourselves, but to remember that they're, your higher power, your God, whatever it may be, that that He loves you, and that no matter what we do, we can always find our way back.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned it, the story of the prodigal son, like, and dude, I listen to that and watch it all the time, because like I really, it's a great parable.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. The prodigal means wasteful son. The wasteful son goes and blows everything. And then as he's coming back home with his tail between his legs after losing everything, blowing it, doing some horrific things, the first thing the Father has for him is compassion.
Yeah. I love it.
And that's the character of God.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's so much beautiful, symbolism in that parable, but that one stands out the most to me. Just, we can do all these, like you said, these things that are bad, but God's there waiting with forgiveness, love, and compassion, right?
Yeah. And
love
so
it. Awesome.
Well, and
that's
he's
great advice, by the way. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And he's always there, and that's the thing is, like, we screw up and we go through a lot of, it doesn't matter how many times, he's there. And it's not like he's like, okay, well, you screwed up that time, you're done. He loves us all the same, and we're all brothers and sisters. And I think that, if we just, just help him out and help love others and to help others and to be there for them. And
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful advice. Thank you, man.
Hey, you're welcome.
If
Todd.
people wanted to reach out to you to get to know you better, or to maybe even ask you a question, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
So I have on Facebook, Weston Clark. On Facebook, I have Facebook and Instagram. It's Weston Clark loves. Let me see.
Loves Life.
Loves Life 81. So so Weston Clark 81 Loves Life.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
If I got that right, but I think I can give you the information, Todd, and you
look
can
it
put
up.
it up.
I'll post it on there. But if they can't get a hold of you, reach out to me and I'll pass it along. But I challenge our listeners to reach out to you.
Yeah.
Because many of them are struggling. It might not be addiction, but on some level they're struggling, or they have a family member or a son or a daughter. I encourage the parents listening to this, share this with your children. They need to maybe hear this from Weston today, especially if they're struggling. And I just know that these words will fall and soften anyone's heart. And you just have a great countenance about you, and you're very well spoken, and you can just feel your love, dude. It's amazing.
Thanks, Todd. I sure love you.
No, I love you too, brother.
And there's a 12-step meeting. So if anybody's in the South region, in Spanish Fork, it's a LDS 12-step.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested, I facilitate that one.
He facilitates it. You want to hear him firsthand, go to that meeting.
Yeah, there you go.
Those meetings are powerful.
Yeah.
They're so powerful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, my friend. You're amazing, and I'm grateful that I know you, and thanks for being vulnerable today and sharing your story to all of us today.
Thank you, Todd. I'm forever grateful.
Yeah.
I love you, man.
Love you too, brother. Well, there you go, listeners. I told you it was going to be amazing. Weston Clark, please reach out to him. If you can't get a hold of him, reach out to me and I'll pass it along. But there you go. I've been filled today, and hopefully you have as well. Please share this with all your friends and families, especially those that might be struggling. Share this podcast with them, and challenge you guys to put a review down. And that will help get the word out even further. But you guys have been so wonderful, faithful followers. Thank you so much. Again, Veracity Networks, thank you for your sponsorship. And then one last thing, Paul Cardall, thank you for the music that we heard at the beginning. At the end of this, he's given me permission to use his music. He's amazing too. And it just brings such a spirit and love into this room when we do that. So anyway, Weston, you're amazing. And thanks for all your time today, brother.
Hey, thanks, Todd. Love you.
Love you. Till next time, everybody.